Welcome to Stagecoach Storytime. I'm Mimi, and today I'll be reading you a book called Papa and the Pioneer Quilt.
Papa and the Pioneer Quilt, written by Jean Van Leeuwen, pictures by Rebecca Bond. My papa has wandering feet. That's what Mama always says. Those feet have taken us to a lot of places. From Pennsylvania, where I was born, to Ohio, where Harrison came along, then to Indiana, where Jacob joined the family, and Missouri. Our new little baby, Susanna, was born there. And now Papa's feet have us wandering again, this time way out west to a place called Oregon. I didn't want to go. I loved our little farm and my pet calf Dolly and Grandma living just down the road. But Papa said, "I hear tell land out there is the finest a man could want." And Mama said, "We have to go, Rebecca. This is Papa's dream." So we set out in early spring by wagon train. Look, they're hugging her grandma goodbye. And there's little baby Susanna in the basket. And they have all of their family's belongings in the covered wagon with their oxen to pull it. Trouble was, my feet looked like they'd be worn out before we got there. I walked along beside the wagon 10, 12, sometimes 15 miles a day. My shoes were all scuffed up before we even got to Kansas. Look, they're all walking so their oxen don't have extra weight to pull. There's Mama and baby Susanna and her brothers. Sometimes Rachel walked beside me. She was a new bride. She smiled all the time, even though all she had in the world was a copper kettle. One noon, when we stopped for dinner, she showed me what was inside, little scraps of fabric. That's all, just old bits of this and that. "I'm sewing them into a quilt," she told me. "So when Thomas and I get to Oregon, we will start our life with a kettle and a quilt." I liked that, turning old bits of this and that into something new. Maybe, I thought, I could make a quilt too. So I asked Mama. "That's a wonderful idea," she said. "You collect the scraps, and together we will sew the quilt." Mama gave me a string bag. The first thing I put in it was the handkerchief Grandma gave me when we left. Her tears were still on it. That handkerchief was the only thing in my quilt bag for a while, until the day we crossed the river. What do you think will happen? Let's see. Oh, that river water was flowing fast. Papa tried to hold on to the oxen, but he was pushed under. Next thing we knew, the river carried him away. "Papa!" cried Jacob. 3 men pulled him out and laid him on shore. He lay so still my heart pounded. Jacob started to cry. "Do you think he will be okay?" Then Papa opened his eyes and he was all right, but not his shirt, ripped from top to bottom. Even Mama couldn't sew it up again, so into my quilt bag it went. Look how happy they are that Papa's okay. Rachel told me stories about her scraps. This one is from my daddy's old coat, and this is the bonnet I wore to church, and that is a piece of my mama's apron, and the breeches my brother Isaac wore when the dog bit him. Do you guys know what breeches are? Those are pants. Her eyes filled with tears. I may not see any of them ever again. We decided to trade a piece of my father's blue shirt for a bit of her mama's checked apron. I added it to my quilt bag. A few weeks later, we were in Nebraska. A new family joined our wagon train. They had 7 girls, and one of them, Maddie, was near my age. It was so nice to have a friend. Maddie and I watched the little ones together and looked for prairie dogs and talked about home. One day we found a whole field of bluebells. "Oh, let's pick some," said Maddie. We picked big bunches to decorate the wagons and more for our hair. I placed a crown of buttercups on Susanna's head. She didn't like it. Look, the girls are so happy. And there's Susanna tossing that little crown of buttercups. Do you think you would like to wear a crown of buttercups on your head? Maddie walked with me through all of Wyoming to where the trail split off for California. There we sadly waved goodbye. "Wait!" She came running back, pushing her sunbonnet into my hand. "Keep it for your quilt," she said. Oh, isn't that a neat gift from a friend? My pesky brother Harrison could never sit still. He'd fallen out of the wagon 3 times. The last time was the worst. The wagon behind us ran right over his foot. Papa said it wasn't broken, and Mama hugged him close. Then she saw his breeches, all in tatters. "You scamp," she scolded. "How are we going to keep you in clothes till we get to Oregon?" So I got something else for my quilt bag. At last we reached the mountains. Everyone had to get out of their wagons and walk to lighten the load for the oxen. But the trail was so steep, and the poor oxen were so tired. Papa coaxed them. He pushed and pulled, but it was no use. Do you know what coaxed means? That means he's encouraging them to go up that steep hill. "We need to lighten their load still more," he said. We left a trunk of Mama's good china beside the trail. Mama cried. Look, there's Rebecca comforting her Mama. It would be hard to leave something behind, wouldn't it? But we made it over the mountains. On the way down, we came upon a broken wagon, its contents strewn all about. "Their oxen must have given out," Papa said sadly. "They'll have to go the rest of the way on foot." That family could have been us, I thought. I looked at a pretty tablecloth. "It's all right," said Mama. "No one will be coming back for it." My quilt bag was starting to fill up. As I walked, I could feel every stick and stone beneath my feet. My shoes had worn so thin. "Will we ever get to Oregon?" I asked Papa. "Soon," he said. Look, there's their covered wagon and their oxen, and Rebecca walking with her Papa. We trudged on, up more mountains, across streams, down rocky hills. The nights grew cold. One morning, the wagon covers were dusted with snow. Look, even the oxen have snow on their back, and they're all wrapped up in blankets trying to stay warm. I bet it was cold. 2 days later, just about noon, I saw something through the trees. Spread out below us in the sunshine was a wide, green, beautiful valley. "Is that Oregon?" I asked. Yes, said Papa. Oh, I bet they're so excited. Mama hugged me. I saw Rachel smiling wider than ever. The men threw their hats in the air, and we all shouted for joy. So, after 6 months of traveling, we were in Oregon. One last thing went into my quilt bag. The dress I wore every day of our journey. It was worn and torn and mended, but some good scraps were left. What else do you see on that clothesline? Do you see Papa's shirt and her brother's breeches and the cloth she traded with Rebecca? And look, there's Maddie's bonnet. What do you think her quilt will look like? We had a cabin now with 40 acres of land, the finest farmland he'd ever seen, Papa said. We worked hard all day, but at night, Mama and I sewed on my quilt. Mama said it would tell the story of our long journey. And there's Rebecca and her mama sewing on her quilt. You can see them in the window. And look, they have a wheelbarrow, and there's her brothers feeding chickens. And look, they have a new baby calf, just like the one she didn't want to leave behind. The pattern is called Wandering Foot, she said. I wasn't sure I liked that. I don't want Papa's feet to wander anymore, I said. Maybe they won't, she said, smiling. We are almost to the ocean. We've about run out of country. Now my quilt is finished, and so far Papa's feet have stayed put. I'm hoping really hard we will too. There's Papa and Mama by the fireplace. Papa has his boots off, and there's a little kitten that they have. And there's Rebecca with her beautiful quilt, and her baby sister Susanna, and her little brothers, all tucked up snug in bed. The end.